The recording has started.
All right, wait for a few minutes. Well, seconds actually, not minutes. But hey, everybody, guess what? It is Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. Your satisfactory Saturday time again. Or brain aneurysm time with all the information Ed sends to you. It is Saturday, December 7th, 2019. Ed, why don't you take it away?
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us again tonight. We're going to get into a couple other things, but I got a bitch that I'd like to get going before I get into it, dealing with Peter. You know, I'm going to nail this. And Peter, just remember, I'm going to send this talk show to you. And, you know, you're telling me that basically I'm full of shit. Well, you're such an asshole. I know that you've been involved in turning people in and playing your games, and if people don't buy your product, you get upset with them. Like you did with me today when you sat there and got me knocked off of Facebook again for the numerous time. And I know you've done it more than once in the past, Peter Eugene. So duck you, all right? You want to play the little games and you want to be a little baby little girl? Now, I've known you for many years, Peter, and I'm going to get into what I'm main topic, but I want to get this bitch because I'm sending this talk show to you, Peter, when I'm done. Because I want you to learn for once in your life to be a man. You claim everybody, you're a doctor. You ain't no goddamn doctor. You are a medic in the military, as you claim. I've done the research on your ass. You never had no PhD in medical. And we've already had that conversation. What was that, 4 years ago? We went through that with other men and women that you and I had this conversation with on a talk show. You think I'm that goddamn stupid? See, you know, Peter, it's amazing with people like you that do this stuff. When I put this stuff out and you say I'm full of shit when it comes down to the stuff I sent you with Pelosi and Boxer and all this stuff, Peter, you don't have a clue of anything in the reality of your own fantasy of your own mind. I grew up with these people. You proved me wrong. Get off your goddamn ass and prove me wrong for once in your life. You can't. See, that's what gets to me about people like this, like Peter Eugene. He goes out there and he says that he's a doctor. He has his website up, and if you don't buy his hemp products, he'll attack you. And I've been through this before, and so has other people been through this with Peter. And I'm going to send this to Paul Mitchell and a few other people because I'm just done with these people. You want to play these little games. You know, and you're hurting yourself, Peter. See, that's the problem. When people sit there and put stuff up and they know what they're talking about, you know, and especially me, I lived it. You don't get it. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, I lived it. I was there. I physically was there. I worked even on Jerry Brown's campaign personally myself in the 70s. See, you don't get who the hell I am. You know, and then you tell me I'm wasting my life and I waste my time on what I'm doing. Well, let me tell you, Peter, I've been dead 13 damn times. No bullshit. I've even done a couple of talk shows on this talk show when I was in ICU on life support. So, you know, it just gets to me that you do this shit and you play these games. And now with Schiff, you know, Schiff's a banker. But, you know, you see, you're one of those type of guys. You sorry sold your soul. So long as you make money, you don't care about the truth. You'll even lie to your own children about it. So, you know, and then you're telling me to go duck myself. You know, it's like, you know, you have no clue who I'm doing. And, you know, if you pack your stuff in one sock. See, I'm just going to tell you straight up, Peter, you pack it in one sock. And I'll pass it on to Paul, and I'll pass it on to everybody else. You can play your little children games like you played with me. And how many other people that you played it with? How many people have been on talk shows with you? How many people that I know that you ended up getting people put in jail personally that I was involved with in the conversations over the last 5 years? You want me to start naming names? I'm not going to embarrass myself or them. You already know it. If we want to play the game, I'm going to be posting this talk show on their Facebook sites when I get back on Facebook, saying that you blocked me again for Facebook because I said the truth to you. See, people like you are scared of the truth. That's the problem with people like you. You ain't a man. You're just a scared little boy. You know, that's the point. You put that stuff up, wake up, and you don't even realize how much I've been involved in this stuff personally myself. So, anyhow, I'm not on a rampage with this idiot You uneducated fool, and it's going to bite you in your own teeth. So it will come back and bite you. And don't ask for compassion because you ain't going to get it. So, but anyhow, let's get back to the structure. What the original talk show tonight was going to be on. We're going to get into conflict of interest tonight. And to see the other point, too, is I got to bring this up. Now, Peter, the opiate bullshit, it's opiate. Epidemic is bullshit. It's a crock of crap. Say, it's because of men and women like you who are not responsible that have to take a 501c3 to write your ass off because you're not responsible. Men and women who are responsible don't sit there and cry, oh, I'm a drug addict, I'm an alcoholic. God, please, grow up and be a man for once in your life. You ain't a man. I've already proven that on talk shows with you. We've argued over that. And you put me back on Facebook. I accepted your friendship back. And then you play the game because all you're doing is following me so you can sit there and play your mind game. So, anyhow, good luck to you. You know, you fool. Anyhow, let's get back into tonight. I apologize, people, but I just had to ventilate on that because I want to send this to Peter, seeing that he's blocking me off of Facebook and playing his little children games again. Anyhow, let's get into the structure. The original structure tonight I want to get into is conflict of interest statements. And see, this is the one thing. When you have elected and public employees, and when you have a judge, and you have a jury, all right? Now, jury members cannot be public employees. I don't give a shit what Peter tells you. They cannot be elected and public employees on a jury. They have their own best interests of their salaries, their employment. See, that's why you need to file a conflict of interest statement with whoever you're dealing with, the courts, corporation, nonprofit, because everybody has a conflict of interest because when they're making a living off of their own circumstances, you know, this is how it comes down to. And you'll find out a lot of these hemp organizations, they have a conflict of interest because they're making a living off their own nonprofit agencies. And see, that's the point. Nonprofits are sitting out there going, oh, we have a right to write it off to the taxpayers. Now, when they write it off to the Queen of England. Now, when you pay your state and federal and property taxes, it goes to the Queen of England. 100% of state and federal goes to the Queen of England. 60% of your property taxes go to the Queen of England. 40% stays in the corporation. The corporation, that is Title 28 or Title 18, 3002 of the corporation. And so you're elected and public servants divided amongst themselves. Fact. And so when I put that stuff up, I've had the facts, and I've even done talk shows on it. We put the evidence out, and it's on our links on the talk show channels. And so I'll get more on that because I'm behind in the last talk show to get some other stuff up. But the thing is conflict of interest statements. So that means elected and public employees. That means your mayor, your city council, your attorneys, lawyers and attorneys, and all public employees belong to the bar, the British Auxiliary to the King or Queen of England. You'll hear these people say, oh, no, that's not true. And go read the bar, the foundation of the bar, 1871, August 21. It will explain it to you. So this is where people will sit there and confuse you and bring this stuff out to throw you for a loop so that way they can make the personal gain. And then they can sit there and make you believe in some fantasy book, like most people do believe in some fantasy book. You know, sorry, I've been dead 13 times, proven fact. I'm not buying into Disney. I'm not buying into fairy tales or fantasy. So, but a conflict of interest statement, you want to make sure you file a conflict of interest statement. And also, too, when you do that, you want to file a 506 4A form. And you want to find out if they're reporting their income. So you can see that's the one thing about the IRS. You want to file that they're reporting their income. And we'll get the other forms up. There are several forms. I don't have them pulled up in front of my face. We've gone over them in the past. There's really 8 forms that you can really file on nonprofit agencies to prove if they're recording their income or not. And if they're not reporting their income, it's a federal crime. And so if you don't get a response back from the IRS, that means you have to file the criminal charges yourself and file it. You have to be a lawful native to file criminal charges. Corporations cannot file criminal charges whatsoever. And that's the one thing that people have got to realize. that, it's like when people sit there and go, I have a right to file this, I have a right to do this. Well, yeah, everybody has a right to do whatever they want to do. But authority, only lawful bloodline natives have it in the United States of the 48 states. Alaska and Hawaii are not part of the 48 states. Alaska is a corporation, no man's land, and Hawaii is a corporation of title, that's 28 and Title 18-3002, a corporation member. So Hawaii still flies the British flag. Hawaii is not part of the United States of we the people of the Civil War. So people got to realize with the Civil War, prior to the Civil War and after the Civil War. Prior to the Civil War, we had a Constitution. After the Civil War, we have two constitutions. One is called the structure of the Vatican and the Queen of England, and the other is the treaties, the native treaties that run the land. The Constitution is a British contract with the treaties to ensure that both of us have rights and freedom on this soil. So people will confuse you all the time. They'll lie to you, and they say you need to have this bond or that insurance. You don't need it. I've never had it, never paid the taxes, don't play the game. Because, you have to respect yourself. And that's also, too, we have a lot of elected and public employees who are honorable. And the honorable ones, those are the ones we need to talk about and, cherish. But we don't need to sit there and put them on the YouTube channels or public, because you do that, that's how they lose their job. You want to respect those public employees who are under their oath of servitude, because you have elected and public servants. And once you remember that these people are to serve you, they're not above you. There is no God above you. There's servants above you, or below you, I mean. And you are the head of the corporation. We, the people, are the government and not a corporation. De facto government has no lawful or legal authority. And that includes with the bankruptcy structure. And banks, they don't have no lawful and legal authority either. So anyways, so the nonprofit directors worry about personal liability. Yes. Trust me, I've been a nonprofit, and I had that concern when I was a nonprofit. And that means if you're elected and public servant, that means you're a nonprofit agency as well. So what you have to be concerned about when you're a nonprofit is that your home, your assets, your jewelry, your fishing poles, your ammunition, your arms, technically your children at that point, they're all liable for your actions. And so I'll post this up again, but most people in a corporation protects the business owner from personal liability. And anyone who knows wants to sue over business-related debt or injury must go the corporation identity first. So, and that means personal assets, cars, bank accounts, bank insurance, everything else is liable. And I'll post this up so you can actually read this structure so that way you comprehend what it is. So board of directors, if it's a nonprofit agency, the board of directors are liable with their homes and assets. So that's why I recommend filing a 1099, a 4506A form. These other forms I recommend you do file. Excuse me, I'm getting hoarse. Apparently, I got to take my other my other heart medicine. So, but anyhow, it's looking at how these things work. So when you step out of the movie and watch the production, that's why I always recommend a movie, Interstate 60. That'll explain your legal and court systems. Remember, legal is British contracts of the British government. That comes after the Civil War. Prior to the Civil War, injured men and women have liability. So when I've talked to people recently, too, about, the courts say we file $20 and we're to have a court date. Well, okay, but that means if you really read it, that means you're a corporation member. And yes, as a corporation member, you can just file $20, file your paperwork. But as a Native Americans, we're not to pay our court systems because our court systems are there to work with us. And I'll put that up there, too, the lawful and legal structure and what the courts can and cannot do again. So you could actually read that and copy it for yourself so you have it for your records. And so when it comes down to an unincorporation association, That's the one thing, is that you don't want to be a corporate member. You're a corporate member, that means you're liable with your assets. And so that means city, county, state laws apply, what they call laws, when they're actually statute codes and administrative rules. That's like when people say the police, well, the police are policy officers. They enforce that policy. And if you actually go on the internet, and I'll post that again tonight after the show, is that lawfully, police departments have no legal or lawfully authority to have contact with you, and the Supreme Court says their job is not to protect you. Period. End of story. The police department's not there for you. It's there for the corporations to protect them. So anyhow, the other point of liability dealing with the structure of a nonprofit. So when it comes down to your personal bank loans and debts and the corporation, if you default, that's personal. You're using a corporation name. That's different. Everybody keeps going, well, they're foreclosing on my home. Well, that's the point. How did you fill your paperwork out? See, people don't comprehend the legal and lawful issue. So when it comes to a nonprofit agency, when they're failing to report their income or property taxes, state taxes, income taxes, that's where, you want to fill these forms on them, because they are liable. And they'll tell you, and I watched the commercials, and I watched this video that people just put out recently trying to say that they're not liable. And I'll get that. I got to find that video, and I'll post that up tonight. So you can watch what people are saying out there, because, see, when it comes down to it, they are liable with their homes and their assets, their children. See, when you go in and you claim your child, see, you write your child off on a tax form, all right? Legally, you cannot do that. Legally and lawfully, you cannot do that, because your child's not 18. But the state gets you already convinced into committing racketeering, fraud, and extortion, so they get you already roped into believing that you have to do this stuff when by law you do not. And law means Constitution and treaties. The treaties are the law of the land, and I'll post them up again tonight, so you can actually read the Supreme Court decisions with the treaties. So, and that's the point that people don't comprehend. The native treaties are the law of this land. The Constitution is from England, and that is the corporation members. That's why it's so apparent to get a conflict of interest statement. And this goes back to first known as a conflict of interest statement. This came back in 1860. And I'll put that up tonight, too, on the wall. But 1860, this is part of the Civil War when this was going on with the conflict of interest. And people don't realize when Lincoln was assassinated by Booth, Booth was English. He was sent here by the Queen, or the King back then, because, not Trump, but Lincoln wasn't going to go against the Constitution, even though he was a licensed lawyer. All lawyers and attorneys are licensed and bonded by the Queen of England. And I'll post that up again tonight. But a conflict of interest statement, that means any attorney, that means any client, anybody has personal financial gain in the case involved. And that's mean anybody has a case interest involved, they are personally liable with their assets. And so don't get misconstrued or misled by these people who are trying to tell you, oh, this doesn't affect me, this has no bearing on me, when it does. And so the conflict of interest statement as form, as you could always look up too, and this is a good one, is the IRS form 990. Okay, you could always file that 990 as a conflict of interest statement with the IRS and the individuals that you're involved with, so that way they know that you filed it with the IRS. Remember, it is your responsibility to file this stuff with the IRS and these corporations. Yes, the IRS is a figment of our imagination technically, and it's based out of Puerto Rico and still run by the Queen of England, and that is a structure that people don't get, and that is the one thing that, people are not comprehending, that they are a figment of your imagination. So Form 990 is return of an organization exempt from income tax. So this is so that way you could retain and be exempt from income tax But also, too, there becomes a different liability on that. So that depends if you don't file certain paperwork. Mandatorily, you're in prison. You don't have an option with this form. And see, and it always gets into title, and it's title and nobility. So when you read these forms, when it says title, that means title means that you are a nobleman or a noblewoman. So that is under the Vatican structure, so you're liable. That's why I don't like the word when people call me Mr. I'd say, please don't insult me, because I'm not a corporation member. Mr., Mrs., all that is corporation run. They'll tell you, oh, no, it's not. But yes, I put it up. I have the statute codes and administrative rules on that we put up many times. So even employees could have a conflict of interest. That means if you're working for a corporation or a company, and that's not including the elected and public employees oversight, the elected and public employees and servants. That means if you are working for, a guy in a restaurant or something like that, and you're going to court, and the owner asks you to go to court, if you're to testify in a situation, that could be a conflict of interest. And I've been personally involved in that, where I had a guy that had me trying to go to workman's comp to testify for him on his workman's comp claim. That said the owner abused him physically and mentally and was yelling at him. Well, it's like, grow up, little children. The owner yelled at me. I've been involved in a lot of employees over 40 years myself. People yell. Sticks and stones and when break my bones. But that's the one thing, when this employee that went and did this stuff at workman's comp, most of the times the guy did and deserved being yelled at. I was surprised he was still working as a cook sometimes, the way he, serviced the food and put the food out in the line. And I did that personally because I know I was there. So, and that's why it's so interesting in dealing with that. And I'll put the conflict of interest statement and the conflict of interest statement policy up on the website tonight after we're done. But the main point is, it is a conflict of interest when you do a lot of these things. Or if you go to a jury, and that's the one thing that I'm going to put in the ballot measure that I've got basically finished. But now I got to submit it. And that has a conflict of interest statement, including that has the registration under the 1938 Foreign Administration Act in the ballot measure. Yes, I know when the public employees see it, they're going to freak out, and people say, Ed, you shouldn't put that in there because they're going to run first. And it's like, no, we want to get it in there. And boy, am I getting hoarse. But you want to get it in there so people can see what the law is, not what they think it is. Once people realize that here's the law, here's the facts, not just statute codes and administration rules, the statutes, the Constitution and the native treaties. And remember, the original native treaties, 1770, with the British government, are the original law of the land. And that was included and ratified in 1778 and 1779. And so I've had some people ask me for that, and I've emailed that out to them. And that is the one thing that once you get this information, please put it on a floppy disk or something, save it, because what's going on the internet, they're eliminating so much real history on the internet, because if people really knew the real truth that they refuse to teach in the school system, we wouldn't have half the problems we got. Yeah. Actually, we wouldn't have most of the problems we have. So, and this is the point, when it comes down to these circumstances of how to educate yourself, that's the one thing that people say, well, I didn't get it in school. Well, turn off your computers, turn off your TVs, and research, read it. And if you're on a computer, do the research. It's all on the computer now. So it's your liability. You can't say, I didn't get taught that in school, and sit there and whine and complain. See, that is the point. You can't do that. It's your responsibility and fault if you don't know that. That's like when these people sit there, try to tell me, history in California, And some of that history, I physically was there, I lived it, watched it, was involved in it. And then these people try to tell you, oh, you couldn't have been there. Well, how do they know I wasn't there? Because that's where I'm from. But, they're from the Midwest, the East Coast, and they don't know what's going on. It's like, in the Midwest and the East Coast, I don't know what's going on out there because I was not living it. And that's the point. When you're not living it, you don't know it. When you're living it, you get to know these things. And this is the problem or the blessing that we have. By living these things, dealing with them, participating. And that is the whole point. Because, we get people all the time that are so judgmental out there. They'll tell people they don't know what they're talking about because they weren't there. And I've made that mistake in the past myself until I came to the conclusion years ago. I can't speak on things that I wasn't there or didn't see or didn't physically witness. And that's the one thing that hearsay witness and hearsay evidence is admissible in court. And that's the one thing that you got to realize. It's like I was watching the news report with this shooting that just happened over in, I think it was Florida. Oh, no, it was the Navy shooting that just happened. And the guy's going, well, you got to sit down people right away and get their story. Because you can't let them go on the internet. You can't do that or go out and have phone call conversations with everybody else because the story changes. And then they start psychologically comprehending what is not real. And that's a fact. It does work that way. I knew that when I was doing investigations 35 years ago. That's common sense. Anybody knows that when you're playing a video game or something like that or watching a movie, and you're watching it and somebody else is watching it, everybody's story changes. So that's why you have to sit down and put it in writing before it changes. If you don't write it and make it in writing, you have no evidence that exists. And that is the point that, making this stuff, make it a reality. That's why when a conflict of interest statement is brought out, that is the main thing to bring the conflict of interest statement out in anything you're doing. You're going to court. You file a conflict of interest statement with the judge. Because the clerk, the cop, everybody involved in that court proceeding, they all work for the corporation. And so they all have a conflict of interest, not only with you, but with each other. See, and that's the point. You make sure that it happens. Now, if you are guilty or committed a real crime called personal and property damage or bodily injury, that's different. Traffic violations, citations are hearsay evidence anyways. So, and that's the point. They're just doing that for revenue. So it's knowing how to go into these things and standing up and going what direction you're going to go into and how to protect yourself. And see, that's the point. It's your responsibility to protect yourself. A lawyer is not there to protect you. A cop is not there to protect you. They're there to protect themselves and their corporation. Without their corporation, they have no job, they have no paycheck. And remember, that's the point. They have no job. They're not in the private sector. That if they're a plumber, technician, something like that, you could always go get a new job. It's simple. Even in the private sector, you could do that, but they have accreditation. And the public sector, the private sector, you don't. And now they're trying to put everything in the private sector. In the public sector, I was an auto mechanic myself. I was never state certified, but I was certified by the manufacturer. Okay, so I went and learned. I didn't go to the corporation and ask permission for a job. And that's what they want you to do today. You have to have permission. You don't have a right. And I always love this one group that comes out and says, right to work. We all have a right to work. No, we don't have a right to work. We have a right to go hunting and fishing and feed ourselves. But right to work to tear down somebody else's homes, family, and forest and regions for a job to destroy our food and resources, destroy somebody's family life. You don't have a right to work to do that. And that's when these public servants are kidnapping and holding people for hostage for traffic infractions or violations. So violations is a misdemeanor. Misdemeanors don't count. Period. You know, even when they try to put some of this stuff, oh, I got felony drug arrest because I had pot on me. No, that don't work either. In the 1937 Marijuana Status Act, if you actually read it, was passed for elected and public employees and registered church members only, is the original structure. And it says, oh, what is it? It says persons. Well, if you're not a person, then you're not applied to it. And people all say time when I talk to them, I'm a person, and I said, okay, I can't talk to you because you're an inanimate object. You don't exist. People go, what do you mean? Well, you just told me you don't exist, so I can have a conversation with air. And that's what it comes down to. And see, if everybody starts standing up and saying these things and standing up in these words and realizing that the words mean so much more than what you really think they do, we could change the whole circumstances. And it's like, watching people that send me stuff like this guy sent me, telling me basically I should do what I'm told. And it's like, no. That's the point about this country of freedom, is not to do what we're told. And that's the point, I'm going to go have my hemp project, my hemp corporation. Well, if you're registered as a corporation, so sorry, buddy, you can lose it. Men and women don't register their businesses. I had 5 businesses, not one of them were registered. And yes, I did go through some points where they tried to come after me years ago. But that didn't work either. Because, where's the injured party? And that is the point, too, that when you're writing your paperwork, too, when you're getting, before you go to court, you always want to put paperwork in before you go to court. Everybody always says, I need my day in court. I need my day in trial. You go to trial, guaranteed 80% lose. It's kangaroo court to go in. It's set up to lose to make you think that you have it. See, we don't have a court system that is running. And people keep telling me, oh, grand jury, we need to get the grand juries going. We have a grand jury, folks. But until you get the public employees off the grand jury and realize and read what a grand jury really is compared to what you think it is, because like all these people, like the United States of America, another guy starts a corporation up and says, we're the real government. You can't start something up and claim that you are the government when you're not. So I can sit there and claim I'm the government myself, but I'm the government on my own soil. Yes, I'm the king of my soil. I write the rules, administrative rules on my soil. I have a right to do that. But I can't come into your home and tell you how to live. And that's what these Democrats and these men and women are doing. Coming in and telling you how to live and what you should do. And that's the one thing that you don't want to be participating involved in that. And remember, anytime you do that, get a contract. Even if you're getting married, write a marriage contract. Don't get a marriage certificate, because then that way the state owns you and a judge could decide. You write a mutual contract between each other. That's the law of the land in Article 1, Section 10. But you have to put Article 1, Section 10 in this stuff. And lawyers and attorneys will tell you, oh, you don't need to put that in. The judges know. Yes, they know, but you have to put it in writing, because if they don't go what your wishes are and you have it in writing, now you have evidence. If you don't have it in writing, you have no evidence. See, that's what we try to get people to comprehend, the evidence book that we put up more than once. See, realizing what evidence is. That's the main thing, is knowing what the circumstances of how to file your complaint. And then when you're filing your complaint, don't forget, you have to put the charges in there. Because you're using their form, it's called a complaint form, but then you have to put C attachment, and you write your criminal charges and make sure that you have them lined out. As the Title 18, 3771, corpus delicti is an injured man or woman. If you don't use corpus delicti, you're still a corporation member, and they don't have to respond to that paperwork. See, I mean, it's so simple when you start realizing how these pieces come together, and you're realizing how these elected and public servants are getting away with what they're getting away with. And once you start able to call them on it, they can't get away with it anymore. And so that's what we want to do, is we want to make sure that you're aware of how to call your name, know your name, and file your rights. And if you're an immigrant, you have privileges. Technically, you have no rights either. You know, when it comes down to it, the rights were installed by the Democrats. Nancy Pelosi is the one who started that crap back in 1977. You know, I'm still amazed that, you know, her and West are still in government after 10 elections. 20 years. These people have made hundreds of millions of dollars off of you. Pelosi's husband, all of a sudden, I'll be posting that up on the website tonight, and you can read how much Pelosi and her husband are making. Now, when you're elected a public employee, you're not supposed to be able to give the contracts to your family. That's supposed to be a federal crime. So, and that's the point. People ain't standing up to the crimes because they think, well, if I do that, and if I stand up to it, and let's say I do that, then they're going to come after me. Well, why would you set that up and play that game? See, that's what always concerns me about people. When I sit there and say, well, that's going to affect me, this is what's going to happen. And why? And I ask people, why? You know, why should it happen to you? Because, you know, you filed something or did something. I filed many paperwork myself, and everybody knows that's on new.org trackers. I filed in the House and Senate that I owned me. Nobody disputed that, including the governor at the time. So, I mean, that's the whole point, is filing your paperwork, stand up on it. And make sure when you do, and you get a certified notarized, make sure you file it with the museums, your local police departments, policy officers, your mayor, city council. So you want to make sure they know what's going on, that you know. Because then they can't lie to you and playing games like they do with most people. And they really get away with that from most people. Because they say, well, I said this. And they'll say, that's law. Well, like I said, folks, you got to realize and do the research and find out what a statute, code, and administrative rule is versus Constitution and treaty law. Those are the laws of the land, the Constitution and the treaty. Everything else is statute, codes, and administrative rules. You know, I mean, it wasn't until, 1912 was the first drunk driving arrest in New York City. But New York City was the first state that started issuing driver's license. First off, New York City was issuing, what they wrote down originally was that they were wanting to have people register to see how many people were on the, to register to see how many people were on the road. But see, that's how they hook you in. Oh, just do this paperwork, we'll just help you out. And then they hook you in. You know, and then I get people all the time to tell me, oh, Ed, you should vote, you should do that. You should do this, and I won't do it. They keep getting upset at me. I'm not going to be hooked in. See, you don't comprehend how they hook you in the system. And then once you realize the system and you get out of it, don't go back. You go back, they're going to punish you. They're going to find a way to punish you. You're on their database when you leave that corporation. You're on the database. And I know that one. I mean, they don't know how to deal with me in my own county. As I educate people like I'm talking to you. But see, that's the whole point. I'm no doctor, I'm no lawyer, I'm no attorney, I'm nothing like that. But I don't need to be because I comprehend what they call a law. I read the law. I read between the lines. I read how to file against them. And so once you comprehend, how to file against these men and women when they commit terrorism and treason. Now, like I said, we do have some very good elected and public servants out there. We want to keep them in place. And they need your help by getting the idiots out of office. See, I mean, that's one thing. If you're a voter, start voting everybody out of office. And that's simple. and vote him out of office. And then people say, well, your vote don't count. Yes, it does. But you have to file for that vote to count. And that's the one thing that people don't comprehend. You have to file for these things. You know, it's like when I filed for my rights to prove I was a lawful bloodline native. And I gave them plenty of time, months to prove me wrong. I had the evidence to back it up that I am. So I was waiting for them to come up with some miracle, and they never came up with some miracle on their side, so everything I said was a fact. So this is how it affects you folks. So always get a conflict of interest. And get this, and we'll get the form up there on the nonprofits tonight too. But this is the one thing that you have to pay attention to, how you're going to survive yourself, how your children are going to survive. Because without these measures that are being placed, nobody else is getting freedom. So why don't we go ahead and open up the floor and we'll go from there.
All participants are unmuted.
Anybody got any thoughts or questions?
Hey, Ed.
Yeah.
I know this is a little off topic probably, but one of the constitutional professors.
I didn't hear what you said. I got squeaking on my end. What did you say?
I said one of the constitutional professors had made the comment, basically saying about the 13th Amendment, that nobody with titles of nobility could, or nobody can hold office with titles of nobility. But then she brought up Trump making his son a baron. But it's funny that I was kind of laughing because it was funny that she even knew that.
Well, not only that, she had to come back and apologize to Trump for stating that statement.
Well, that and the child's name is Baron, kind of like John Wayne was known as the Duke. He wasn't actual title of nobility. It was just a name.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Sure, embarrassed the hell out of her. Go ahead.
Now, now on this conflict of interest, is there any way to any format to set up? Or you said something last time that they were putting out new documents.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have any new documents that I can go to a website and fill out one?
Yeah, I'll get some of those posted here in the next 48 hours up on the YouTube channel tonight.
Okay.
Because I do have those, and I thought I sent you some about 2 weeks ago. But if you haven't got them, I'll go ahead and post them in the channel tonight, so that way other people can see it and realize when you're filing this stuff up, because when I do my 4506A form, going after them because they're a nonprofit agency, I'm not a corporation. I'm not registered. All right? And that's the one thing people don't comprehend. I'm totally different than most people because most people are registered, so they have to file it administratively. I'm not registered. So I file my structure in Washington, D.C. in the Supreme Court. So, I'm going above their head, and that's what I'm out because they keep telling me, and they keep telling me, quit blindsiding me, Ed, and I'm like, why? I'm going after their budget, and so I'm going after different channels to eliminate their budget. So that's the way we need to do it. And they make too much money in taxes anyways. Go ahead.
Also, you said it was 990 that you file?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was because I wanted to make sure I got the numbers right.
Well, yeah, but I always file 4 or 5 different instruments, but on the same topic because they have different filings, does that make sense? But they're the same filings, but they do that to throw you for a loop. So, I'll send you a few other filings, but I like to file 3 or 4 different other administrative rules with them, so that way they realize that they can't just walk away from it and ignore it. And if they find out they ignore it, that's their job. Literally, they could be terminated and do jail time, a minimum from 3 years to 30 years. I think it's 30 years to 25. So, I mean, they already have stuff in place, but it's up to us to learn how to use it and learn.
See, they never say anything about any of this stuff, and they think people know about it, but they've got so much junk out there that nobody's previous parents has explained it to them that they can turn around and pass it down the line. So, I mean, by the time you start hearing about stuff like this, everybody's like, oh, they've got that? Oh, that's what that form is for? Nobody has said anything about it before. I didn't even know anything about it. So it seems like this is all new stuff that, I mean, it's especially new to me because I didn't even know there was a Format 990 out there.
So anybody else got any other comments?
Hey, how do you feel about deprivation of rights under color of law as a defense, or using that to defend against something they're accusing you of?
The defamation under color of law, don't forget you have to file that under color of law. So if you have to prove the defamation of character, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you're able to prove it, and then you have to file that with your federal district attorney in Washington, D.C., with the Department of Washington, D.C., DHS, and Washington, D.C. itself, as well as your state attorney general in your local federal court. And that's not your district court. That's your local federal court. District courts are Article 1, administrative courts are under legislative. You want to stay away from your administrative courts. You want to stay in your federal courts of your lawful native structure. And then also, too, when you do file that, and if you're going into a court hearing, you always make sure that you file on the judge to make sure that he has an actual Constitution oath to the Constitution, not the corporation, and he actually has a Constitution insurance bond, and there are those, and I'll post that up tonight, too. So there are Constitution bonds that they're required to have. So that is the one thing. The main thing is filing the paperwork and make it known. Because everybody sits there, and I've had people say, well, Ed, you can't do that. And it's like, yeah, you make it known. I've got it known. That's why, when I walk around nowadays, I mean, basically, public employees literally run from me now. I don't have a problem from them. Because then I don't have to worry about them trying to sneak up on me. Because I know that when I'm filing, and I'm watching budgets being cut, and also, too, the other one is Walter Bruin, the CRF1, and I'll post that up on the YouTube channel tonight. And you want to look at Walter Bruin's website because he has all of it with the 48 states of their finances. And you go through his website to verify through that for the nonprofits, and you can file on the nonprofit organizations because they have to be registered and filed under administrative rules, and if they're not, then they can go to jail. And you want to push for them to go to jail. People say, well, I filed it, and they're making amends, they're apologizing. No, there's no apologies. They know what the law is. And that's the one thing. They're not going to forgive you. Why are you going to forgive them? You're driving without a license, and they pull you over. Are they going to sit there, we know the law, we're going to let you go? No, they throw your ass in jail, might try to beat you up and whatever else. So that's the whole point. Until we get the rights to travel initiated, which to my understanding, I believe there's supposed to be an administrative act coming from Trump on the rights to travel for natives coming up. So when that happens, that's going to shock a lot of people, and that's going to shock the district attorneys in the states. Because in that way, your rights to travel are going to be installed. they'll be back in place. And I've heard the rumor, but I haven't seen the paperwork yet on it. Like I've seen paperwork on other stuff that has happened. So, but you always want to do a conflict of interest statement, including when you're going to jury trial. You want to put a conflict of interest to the jury, to jury members, to make sure they're not public employees or contractors thereof. Because anybody who's a contractor thereof has a conflict of interest. Because everybody's there for personal gain. You know, everybody's there for themselves. You know, everybody knows what I mean. So, and we could defeat this stuff. That's the point. But the only way it's going to happen is by we the people. Nobody else is going to do it. And so, and they know the people are waking up. You know, that's like they're going after Trump so hard. They have no evidence on Trump. And Schiff is going after him with Pelosi so hard because of the contracts they got, because Pelosi and Schiff have made a living off of the taxpayers, literally. And by that, they're not supposed to be able to have contracts. Or, you know, Pelosi's husband is not supposed to be able to get government contracts or jobs from the government because Pelosi is a senator. Shaft is not supposed to do the same thing with his family. He's not supposed to be controlling the resources in California through his family's bank. I mean, when you trace the history of who, what, why, and how, it really becomes a fact of why we need to do these things. And people say, well, I just take the buyout. Well, when you take the buyout and they come for your home and you don't do what they tell you to do, you know, like I've experienced with different other people in conversations, you know, or telling me if I don't sponsor their website or their nonprofit or whatever, and they try to come after me, it's like, screw you, that's why I don't get involved in that stuff. Because people say, well, would you recommend me for a job? No, I don't want to take that liability. Because I do that, then I have a liability from whoever I recommended, and you fail, then I'm liable for your actions. I won't do that. You know, nobody in their right mind does that. Now, unless it's a family member, and that's a different story because you have to live with them at that point. So that answered part of your question, I hope. Okay. Anybody else got anything they'd like to add in tonight? Like I said, I'll get some of this stuff posted up tonight.
Walter Burian, is that the guy, CAFR1, CAFR1?
Can you speak up a little louder? You're like in a tunnel. I can barely hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is he the guy who talks about the comprehensive annual financial report? Is that the guy you're talking about?
Yeah, that's Walter Bruin.
Okay. Oh, I thought it was like Burian or something.
Yeah, I'll make sure that's up on the site, because I know I've talked to Walter. I met Walter back in 2001 personally at the Oregon State Senate. When he came there, was explaining this to senators and Congress members back then when I was involved with senators back then, and he personally was there himself explaining this, and people were brushing him off, and it's like, that's the one thing about Walter. Walter knows what he's talking about. He knows where the money is.
Yeah.
His website has the list on it, and that's why when you go to his website, and then you go through that with the nonprofit structure and the conflict of interest statements, and you file them correctly, this is how we could take back our country. And this is the point people got to realize: it's our country, not theirs. You know, so I mean, the only way we're going to protect the bloodline is by ourselves. Nobody else is going to protect it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, anybody else got anything they would like to add further? Okay, and for those, most people know how to get a hold of me too, if you need other questions or other information. So, nobody else has anything else tonight, then we'll call it an evening. And with that, may the great spirit and Creator look after you and Mother provide food for you, and we work together to bring back our rights because you can believe in anything from a foreign country, but if you don't believe in your own country, there's no future for yourselves. And with that, have a good evening, and may the Creator bless you.
Thank you, Ed, for
And you.
informing us. Thank you all for listening and watching Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. Again, it is Saturday, December 7th, 2019. And remember, guys, he sounds a little bit ragged right now. He has been...
Well, the one thing I was going to add, why don't we just come back on the beginning of the year?
So take a break until January?
What do you think about that?
Sounds fine to me.
Yeah, until January 4th, I think it is. 4th or 5th is Saturday after the beginning of the year.
Okay, yeah. Give Ed some time to relax and get the stuff done that he's been trying to get done. And he's been working really
hard. Yeah,
hard.
I still want to get this ballot measure because I want to get this ballot measure up.
So, okay. Yeah, we'll come back in next year. We'll have a little bit of a break for a while. And again, as Ed said, there's ways to contact him. If you really need to contact him, what you can do is go to new.organtrackers.com or .org, and there's a contact area there that you can send him a message, and if you need to contact him. But remember, he'll give you information. It's up to you to write up and fill out and do all the paperwork yourself. He's not going to do it for you. He'll give you information free, and it's up to you to read it, comprehend it, and do it properly. He takes no liability, neither do I, for any of your actions with the information we give. And with that, thank you very much, and this would be the...
We are not doctors, lawyers, or professionals.
No. Well, I mean, we are professional assholes, so... But other than
No, that's true. All right, you got me on that one.
Yeah. But, I mean, yeah, that doesn't make you any money. It usually makes you lose money. But still, with that, guys, we'll, if there's an emergency or something, then we will probably have a show. If not, we'll see you next year. And that's the year where we'll find out who the next corporate head's going to be. So, have a Merry Christmas.
No, I've been knocked off Facebook by a few people too right now. So, and it's interesting because I know who's knocked me off. So, it's and it's really disturbing when you got people out there that when you tell the truth because you're not sitting there going by their way or buying their products, they get upset.
Well, I mean, honestly, Ed, you got to look at it the proper way. If they're knocking you off and they're really going after you, you're doing something right because that's information they don't want out.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, guys.
I agree with you there.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.
And all that other, whatever, Hanukkah,
Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year's. Enjoy your guys' self. And a happy winter solstice, too.